The Christmas lights blur past my windshield as I grip the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white against the worn leather. 8 hours on the road from Denver to Phoenix, and I'm finally pulling into the familiar driveway of my childhood. Home. The desert landscape looks strange, dressed in twinkling decorations, palm trees wrapped in colored bulbs that seem to mock the traditional Christmas I remember from our old house in Minnesota. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I stretch my cramped legs as I step out of my Honda Civic, the December air surprisingly warm against my skin. The trunk holds carefully wrapped presents I spent weeks selecting, each one chosen with the precision of someone who hasn't lived at home in 12 years, but still remembers everyone's favorite colors, hobbies, and secret wishes. The front door opens before I can knock, and there stands Patricia Caldwell, my mother, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. She wears the emerald green sweater I sent her last Christmas, the one she claimed was too fancy for everyday wear. Behind her, warm light spills from the dining room, and I catch glimpses of my younger sister Morgan setting something on the mahogany table that belonged to our grandmother. "Welcome home, sweetheart." Mom's voice carries that particular tone she reserves for special occasions. Bright and musical, but with an undertone I can't quite identify. "You must be exhausted from that drive." The familiar scent of pine and cinnamon candles wraps around me as I step inside, mixing with something else, something savory that makes my stomach growl. I realize I haven't eaten since the gas station sandwich in Flagstaff hours ago. The house looks exactly as I remember from my last visit 2 years ago, except now garlands drape every doorway and a 12-foot Fraser fir dominates the living room corner, decorated with ornaments I helped make as a child. Morgan emerges from the kitchen carrying a crystal pitcher of water, her dark hair pulled back in the same ponytail she wore in high school. At 28, she still has that easy confidence that comes from never having left home, never having to rebuild yourself in unfamiliar places. She sets the pitcher on the dining table with the satisfied precision of someone who knows exactly where everything belongs. "Jessica." She rushes over for a hug, and I breathe in her familiar vanilla perfume. "I can't believe you actually made that crazy drive." "Mom's been worrying about you on those mountain roads all day." The dining room table stretches before us like something from a magazine spread. Our grandmother's china gleams under the chandelier, each place setting arranged with military precision. The burgundy tablecloth, the one Mom only uses for Christmas and Easter, flows in perfect waves across the polished wood. Crystal glasses catch the light, casting tiny rainbows across the walls. Morgan adjusts a fork that was already perfectly aligned, then steps back to admire her work. "I've been setting up since this morning. Everything has to be just right for tomorrow's dinner." I notice place cards written in Mom's careful script scattered across one end of the table. My name appears on cream-colored cardstock, nestled between Uncle Richard and my cousin Ashley. The familiar warmth of belonging settles in my chest as I imagine tomorrow's celebration. All of us gathered around this same table, sharing stories and passing down family recipes. Dad appears from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose, a crossword puzzle folded in his hand. David Caldwell has aged gracefully, his hair now completely gray, but his smile still carrying that mischievous quality that made Mom fall in love with him 35 years ago. He enfolds me in one of his bear hugs, the kind that makes me feel like I'm 10 years old again. There's my globetrotter. "How's life treating you in the big city?" "Denver's hardly a big city compared to Phoenix," I laugh. "But it's good. Work's been crazy busy, which is why I couldn't get away any earlier." He nods approvingly. "That promotion keeps you on your toes?" The conversation flows easily as we settle in the living room, Mom bringing out a tray of her famous Mexican hot chocolate, the recipe passed down from her own grandmother. The ceramic mugs warm my hands as steam rises from the rich, spiced liquid. Morgan curls up on the sofa beside me, her legs tucked under her like a cat. Tell us about your apartment, she says. The pictures you sent don't do it justice. I describe my one-bedroom place near downtown, the view of the mountains from my tiny balcony, the coffee shop downstairs where I've become friends with the baristas. It feels strange translating my daily life into stories for people who love me but live in a completely different world. Mom listens with the intense focus she's always brought to conversations about my life, asking detailed questions about my neighbors, my commute, whether I'm eating enough vegetables. It's the kind of attention that once felt suffocating but now seems precious. Something I don't realize I miss until I'm sitting in this living room again. The clock on the mantel chimes 10:30, and I stifle a yawn. The drive from Denver started. Before dawn, winding through mountain passes and desert highways, 8 hours of anticipation building with every mile marker that brought me closer to home. You should get some sleep, Mom says, noticing my fatigue. Tomorrow's going to be a long day with everyone arriving. Everyone includes my 3 aunts, 2 uncles, and various cousins, the same cast of characters who've gathered for Christmas dinner since I was small enough to sit at the children's table. I picture the house filled with familiar voices, the dining room table extended to its full length, chairs borrowed from every room to accommodate our growing family. I carry my suitcase to my old bedroom, surprised to find it exactly as I left it when I moved to Colorado. The twin bed with its faded quilt, the desk where I wrote high school essays, the bookshelf still holding my collection of mystery novels. Photos from college and early jobs sit on the dresser, creating a timeline of a life that moved away, but never quite severed its roots. Morgan appears in the doorway holding fresh towels. I put new sheets on the bed this morning, and there's extra blankets in the closet if you get cold. The thoughtfulness touches me more than it should. In Denver, I live alone, taking care of myself with the independence I fought so hard to achieve. But here, surrounded by people who remember when I needed help reaching the top shelf, being cared for feels like slipping into a warm bath. I unpack methodically, hanging clothes in the closet that still smells faintly of the lavender sachets Mom has always used. My gifts for tomorrow go under the tree in the living room, adding to the growing pile that suggests this year's celebration will be as generous as ever. The house settles into nighttime quiet as everyone heads to their rooms. Through my bedroom window, I can see the neighbors' Christmas lights twinkling in the darkness, creating patterns of red and green across the desert landscape. The silence feels different from my apartment in Denver, deeper somehow, cushioned by the presence of family sleeping in nearby rooms. I pull out my phone to text my best friend Rachel back in Colorado, telling her I arrived safely. Her response comes immediately despite the late hour. How's the family reunion shaping up? Perfect so far. Tomorrow's going to be amazing. As I set the phone aside and turn off the bedside lamp, contentment settles over me like the familiar weight of my childhood. Quilt. Tomorrow will bring the chaos of family dinner, the comfortable rhythm of shared memories and inside jokes, the satisfaction of being exactly where I belong. The last thing I hear before drifting off is the gentle hum of the dishwasher running. In the kitchen, Mom taking care of the final details that will make tomorrow perfect. In a few hours, this house will fill with the laughter and conversation that define our family celebrations. And I'll be right here in the middle of it all, finally home for Christmas. The aroma of roasted turkey pulls me from sleep, rich and savory, mixed with the sweet scent of cinnamon rolls baking. Sunlight streams through the blinds of my childhood bedroom, creating golden stripes across the hardwood floor. Christmas morning in Phoenix feels surreal with bright sunshine instead of snow. But the familiar sounds of family moving through the house below fill me with anticipation. I check my phone. 9:15. Perfect timing to help with final preparations before everyone arrives at noon. The shower in the hall bathroom still has the same water pressure issues from my teenage years, but the hot water feels luxurious after yesterday's long drive. I dress carefully in the burgundy sweater I bought specifically for today. The color chosen to complement the family photos we'll inevitably take. The kitchen buzzes with activity when I come downstairs. Mom stands at the stove stirring gravy, her apron tied snugly around her waist, while Dad carves thick slices from a spiral ham at the counter. The turkey sits golden and magnificent on the cooling rack, its skin perfectly crispy and gleaming with herb butter. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," Dad calls without looking up from his carving. "Your mother's been up since 5 making sure everything's perfect." Morgan appears from the pantry carrying serving bowls, her hair already styled in soft waves that frame her face. She's changed into a forest green dress that makes her eyes sparkle, the kind of effortless elegance that comes from having time to prepare without rushing. The dining room table has been extended to its full length, accommodating 14 place settings with military precision. The doorbell chimes at 11:30, earlier than expected. Through the front window, I see Uncle Richard's silver sedan. In the driveway, followed by Aunt Beverly's white SUV. My stomach flutters with excitement as voices fill the entryway, the particular volume and energy that comes when the Caldwell family gathers in one space. Cousin Ashley bursts through the kitchen doorway first, her 3-year-old son Connor attached to her hip. "Jessica!" She squeezes me with her free arm, Connor regarding me with solemn brown eyes from his perch. "Mom's been talking about your visit for weeks." More relatives stream through the house, each arrival bringing hugs, questions about my life in Denver, and the comfortable chaos of family gathering. Aunt Beverly comments on how thin I look. Uncle Richard wants to hear about my job at the marketing firm. My teenage cousin Tyler barely looks up from his phone, but manages a polite nod in my direction. The living room fills with conversation and laughter, gift exchange postponed until after dinner, according to family tradition. I settle into the familiar rhythm of catching up, sharing carefully edited stories about my life, listening to updates about marriages, divorces, new jobs, and health scares that have shaped the past 2 years since I was last home. At 12:15, Mom appears in the living room doorway, smoothing her hands over her apron. "Dinner should be ready in just a few more minutes. Why don't you all start moving to the dining room? A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off." The migration begins slowly, family members finishing conversations. As they make their way toward the table, I hang back, wanting to help Mom with any last-minute preparations, the way I always did as a child. The kitchen smells like heaven, every surface covered with covered dishes ready to be transported to the dining room. "Mom, what can I carry?" I reach for the gravy boat, its porcelain surface warm from the hot liquid inside. She pauses at the stove, her back to me, stirring something that doesn't need stirring. "Oh, sweetheart." She turns slowly, her face wearing an expression I can't immediately read. "About dinner." The gravy boat grows heavy in my hands as something cold settles in my chest. "What about dinner?" "Well?" Her laugh sounds forced, artificial, like wind chimes in a hurricane. "We already ate." The words hang in the air between us, impossible and real at the same time. The gravy boat slips from my fingers, hitting the tile floor with a crash that sends porcelain shards skittering across the kitchen. Hot gravy splashes across my burgundy sweater, staining the fabric I chose so carefully this morning. "You already ate." I repeat the words slowly, testing their weight, trying to make them make sense. Around 11. She won't meet my eyes, focusing instead on the mess spreading across the floor. We were all so hungry, and everything was ready, so we just went ahead and had Christmas dinner. My legs find the kitchen chair behind me without conscious direction. The sounds from the dining room seem to come from very far away, voices of my family settling around the table where my place card still sits, meaningless now. But I drove 8 hours to be here. The words come out as a whisper. 8 hours yesterday. For Christmas dinner. Mom's face cycles through expressions, landing on something that might be sympathy if it reached her eyes. I know, honey, and we appreciate that you came. It's just that we couldn't wait any longer. I stare at the fragments of the gravy boat scattered across the floor, each piece reflecting the overhead lights like broken stars. The gravy continues to spread, seeping into the grout lines between tiles, creating patterns that will stain permanently if not cleaned immediately. Couldn't wait any longer. I drove through a snowstorm in the mountains. I left at 4 in the morning yesterday to get here in time. She moves toward the broom closet, her movements efficient and practiced. Here, let me clean this up. You should probably change your sweater before the stain sets. The practical suggestion hangs between us like a bridge I refuse to cross. Change my sweater. As if the gravy stain is the problem. As if fresh clothes will somehow make this moment different. From the dining room comes the sound of chairs scraping across hardwood. The family settling in for a meal that has already happened without me. Uncle Richard's voice carries over the others, telling some story about his golf game. Aunt Beverly laughs at something Ashley said. The normal sounds of Christmas dinner, taking place as scheduled, exactly as planned. How long have you been planning this? The question emerges from somewhere deep in my chest, surprising us both with its directness. Mom stops sweeping the broken porcelain, her hands tightening around the broom handle. Planning what? To eat without me. To have Christmas dinner while I was still driving here, still believing I was coming home to be part of it. Her silence stretches long enough for me to hear Connor giggling in the dining room, probably being entertained by one of his aunts while the adults settle into their conversations. The sound of family joy happening in the next room, complete without me. Jessica, you're being dramatic. Mom's voice takes on the patient tone she used when I was a teenager throwing tantrums. We had Christmas dinner because we were hungry and everything was ready. You can still visit with everyone. Visit. The word hits like a slap. I can visit with my own family after they've celebrated Christmas without me. I stand up from the chair, my legs shaky but functional. The gravy stain on my sweater has spread, creating an abstract pattern across the burgundy fabric. In the dining room, someone mentions how delicious the turkey was, past tense, already consumed and praised. The kitchen suddenly feels too small, the walls pressing inward like a box. I need air, space, somewhere to process what just happened. My feet carry me toward the back door, past the cooling rack still holding the remains of the feast I drove 8 hours to share. The desert air hits my face as I step onto the patio, warm and dry despite it being December. Palm trees rustle. In the breeze, their fronds decorated with lights that seem garish now instead of festive. The pool reflects the blue sky, its surface disturbed only by the automatic cleaner making its methodical rounds. Behind me, the sounds of Christmas dinner continue. Silverware against china. Conversations overlapping. Laughter punctuating stories I'm not hearing. My family, complete and happy without me, just as they have been for the past 2 years since my last visit. I pull out my phone and scroll to Rachel's number, but my thumb hovers over the call button. What would I say? How do you explain that you drove 8 hours to discover your presence was optional? That Christmas happened on schedule, with or without you? The back door opens and Morgan steps outside, her face creased with concern. Hey, are you okay? Mom said there was an accident with the gravy boat. An accident. That's one way to describe. The moment my expectations shattered across the kitchen floor along with the porcelain. Morgan's question hangs in the desert air as I stare at the chlorinated water, trying to find words for something that defies explanation. The gravy stain on my sweater has begun to set, creating a permanent reminder of the moment everything changed. They ate without me. The words feel foreign in my mouth, like speaking a language I'm still learning. Morgan's eyebrows draw together, in confusion. What do you mean they ate without you? We're about to eat now. No, Morgan. I turn to face her, seeing my sister clearly for what feels like the first time in years. Christmas dinner already happened. At 11 this morning. While I was still on the road, I believed I was driving home to be part of it. Her face goes through a series of expressions, confusion giving way to something that looks almost like recognition, then settling into careful neutrality. That doesn't make sense. Why would Mom do that? The question I've been asking myself for the past 10 minutes. I sit down heavily on one of the patio chairs, the metal warm from the Phoenix sun. How long have you known? Know what? That I wasn't really expecting. That Christmas dinner would happen whether I showed up or not. Morgan looks back toward the house, then sits across from me, her green dress contrasting sharply with the bright patio furniture. Jessica, I think you're misunderstanding something, because it seems pretty clear that 14 people just sat down to Christmas dinner that already happened 3 hours ago. She fidgets with her bracelet, a nervous habit from childhood. Maybe Mom just wanted to have everything ready when you got here. You know how she is about timing. The explanation sounds reasonable, the kind of logic that might have satisfied me yesterday. But sitting here with gravy stains on my Christmas sweater, watching my family celebrate through the sliding glass door, reasonable explanations feel inadequate. Morgan, when did you set the table? Yesterday morning, like I told you, for 14 people. She nods, then catches herself. Well, actually, we weren't sure exactly how many would be here, but my place card was already made. You had it written and positioned yesterday. Her silence tells me everything I need to know. Through the glass door, I watch Uncle Richard gesturing animatedly, telling some story that has Aunt Beverly covering her mouth to hide her laughter. The scene looks exactly like Christmas dinner should look, except I'm watching it from outside, like a stranger peering into someone else's life. I pull out my phone and scroll through my text messages with Mom from the past month. The evidence sits right there in the thread, conversations I didn't analyze carefully enough at the time. November 28th. Mom asking what time I plan to arrive for Christmas. December 3rd. Her suggestion that I might want to consider visiting the weekend after Christmas instead, when things were less hectic. December 10th. A casual mention that Morgan was handling all the dinner preparations this year. Morgan watches me scroll, her face growing paler. What are you looking for? Proof that I'm not losing my mind. I find the text from December 15th, the one that should have been a red flag. Mom writing, "Don't feel obligated to rush down here, sweetheart. We know how busy your work schedule is. Christmas will be Christmas whether you're here or not." At the time, I interpreted it as her being considerate, not wanting me to stress about the drive. Now the words reveal themselves as exactly what they were. A clear statement that my presence was optional. Look at this. I hand Morgan the phone, watching her face as she reads. Her shoulders sag slightly. Jessica, I think Mom was just trying. Not to pressure you, or she was telling me the truth and I chose not to hear it. I walk back inside, leaving Morgan on the patio with her careful explanations. The dining room buzzes with conversation, everyone settled comfortably around the extended table. My place setting remains, the burgundy napkin folded precisely. The water glass filled with ice that's beginning to melt. Dad looks up as I enter. There you are! We were wondering where you'd gotten to. I study his face, searching for signs of guilt or discomfort, but find only mild curiosity. Either he's an excellent actor, or he genuinely doesn't understand the magnitude of what just happened. How? Was the turkey? I ask, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Delicious, as always. He pats his stomach. Your mother outdid herself this year. Past tense again. The turkey was delicious. The dinner happened. The family gathering occurred on schedule, complete and satisfying. Aunt Beverly turns in her chair, smiling warmly. Jessica, honey, you look pale. Are you feeling all right? I'm fine. Just surprised that Christmas dinner started without me. The conversation doesn't pause the way it should. Instead, Uncle Richard launches into a story about his neighbor's Christmas light display, and Aunt Beverly responds with enthusiasm. My statement hangs in the air unacknowledged, as if I hadn't spoken at all. I retreat to my childhood bedroom, closing the door behind me with a soft click that somehow sounds like a gavel falling. The room feels different now, less like a preserved shrine to my youth, and more like a museum display. Pretty, but untouchable. Maintained, but not lived in. Laptop sits on the desk where I left it yesterday, and I power it up with shaking fingers. The family group text thread loads slowly, messages dating back to early November when Christmas plans began taking shape. November 8th, Mom starts the conversation about who would bring what dishes. November 12th, discussion of dietary restrictions and preferences. November 18th, confirmation of the guest list and seating arrangements. I scroll through dozens of messages, watching the coordination unfold. Assignments made, schedules confirmed, logistics handled with military precision. Everyone knew exactly what was expected of them and when, except me. My contributions to the thread are sparse and reactive. Responses to direct questions, confirmations of my travel plans, offers to help that were politely deflected. I wasn't part of the planning so much as informed of decisions already made. December 20th, a photo from Ashley showing the pies she'd already baked and frozen. December 22nd, Morgan sharing a picture of the table settings, complete with name cards. December 23rd, Dad joking about having to expand his belt before the big meal. The big meal that happened this morning at 11 o'clock, 3 hours before. I walked through the front door. I find my travel confirmation emails, the ones showing my planned arrival time of 9 p.m. on December 24th. The timeline I shared with the family weeks ago. The schedule everyone claimed to understand and accommodate, but accommodation looks different than I thought it would. My phone buzzes with a text from Rachel in Denver. "How's Christmas with the fam? Send pics of the feast." I stare at the message, trying to figure out how to explain something I don't fully understand myself. Instead, I scroll through my photo gallery to the pictures I took last Christmas, the last time I made it home for the holidays. The photos show the same dining room, the same extended table, the same family members gathered around plates of turkey and ham. But there's one crucial difference. I'm in those pictures. Not just present in the room, but included in the composition, part of the family portrait instead of the person taking it from the outside. A soft knock interrupts my investigation. Morgan's voice comes through the door, tentative and careful. "Jessica, can I come in?" I close the laptop and unlock the door. She enters carrying 2 cups of coffee, the good china cups Mom reserves for special occasions. The coffee smells rich and aromatic, probably from the expensive beans Dad orders online. "Brought you some caffeine." She sits on the edge of the bed, offering me one of the cups. "I thought we should talk." "About what? About how Christmas dinner happened without me? About how everyone seems perfectly fine with that arrangement?" She sips her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "Mom didn't mean for it to happen this way." "Then how did she mean for it to happen, Morgan?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Christmas was planned and executed without any consideration for whether I'd actually be here to participate. The coffee tastes bitter despite the cream, or maybe that's just my mood affecting everything." Morgan sets down her cup and looks directly at me, her expression more serious than I've seen since we were children navigating one of our mother's complicated moods. "Can I tell you something? But you have to promise not to get angry. I'm already angry. But go ahead." She takes a deep breath. "Mom's been different since you moved to Denver. More controlling about family events. She wants everything to be perfect, and perfect means predictable. Predictable means knowing who will actually show up?" Morgan nods reluctantly. "You missed Easter 2 years ago because of that work conference, and last Christmas you came but left early because of that flight you had to catch. So this is punishment for having a life outside this house?" I don't think she sees it as punishment. I think she sees it as managing expectations. The phrase hits me like ice water. Managing expectations. As if my presence had become unreliable enough to plan around rather than plan for. The knock on my bedroom door comes at 7:30 that evening, soft but insistent. I've spent the afternoon in self-imposed isolation, alternating between staring at my laptop screen and lying on my childhood bed, trying to process the magnitude of what I've discovered. Jessica? Mom's voice carries through the door, artificially bright. Everyone's gathering in the living room for gift exchange. We don't want to start without you. The irony would be laughable if it weren't so devastating. They don't want to start a gift exchange without me, but Christmas dinner was perfectly manageable in my absence. I'll be out in a minute. I catch my reflection in the dresser mirror before leaving the room. The burgundy sweater hangs loose now, the gravy stain a dark reminder of this morning's revelation. My hair looks flat, my skin pale despite the Arizona sun streaming through the windows all day. The living room buzzes with post-dinner contentment. Uncle Richard has claimed Dad's recliner, his belt loosened from the meal I wasn't invited to share. Aunt Beverly and Ashley sit together on the sofa, sorting through gift bags and checking name tags. Connor plays quietly with a new truck, making vrooming sounds that fill the comfortable silence. There she is. Dad's voice booms with forced cheer as I enter. We were beginning to think you'd fallen asleep. I just needed some quiet time. I settle into the remaining chair, the one positioned slightly outside the family circle, and notice how naturally everyone else has arranged themselves. Couples next to each other, parents near their children, siblings sharing space with easy familiarity. Mom emerges from the kitchen carrying a plate of her famous chocolate chip cookies, the recipe she guards like a state secret. She offers them around the room with gracious hostess efficiency, pausing at each person to ask about their meal, their comfort, their satisfaction with the day's events. When she reaches me, her smile falters for just a fraction of a second. Would you like a cookie, sweetheart? You missed dessert earlier. Missed dessert. As if I chose to absent myself from the meal instead of arriving to find it had already concluded without me. No, thank you. I'm not very hungry. The gift exchange begins with Connor, his excitement infectious as he tears through wrapping paper with 3-year-old enthusiasm. Each present reveals itself with squeals of delight and immediate demands to play with his new treasures. The adults watch with indulgent smiles, phones capturing every moment of childish joy. My gifts, carefully selected and wrapped in Denver, wait under the tree with the others. I watch people open presents I chose specifically for them. Uncle Richard genuinely laughs at the golf-themed book I found. Aunt Beverly tears up over the photo album of family memories I compiled. Ashley loves the handmade scarf I spent weeks crocheting. Each positive reaction should bring satisfaction, but instead, I feel increasingly disconnected from the scene playing out before me. I selected these gifts as a participant, someone who belonged in this room, who shared these relationships and memories. Now I sit watching people appreciate presents from someone they apparently didn't expect to see today. Morgan opens her gift. From me last, her eyes widening at the vintage jewelry box I found at a Denver antique shop. It's beautiful, Jessica. It was really beautiful. She looks at me with something that might be guilt or pity, I can't tell which. The presents I receive feel different somehow. Lighter both physically and emotionally. A generic gift card from Uncle Richard and Aunt Beverly. A candle set from Ashley that still has the Walmart price tag tucked under the bow. Dad hands me an envelope containing a check for $50 with Happy Holidays, Sweetie written on the memo line in his familiar handwriting. Mom's gift comes last, presented with a ceremony that draws everyone's attention. It's a small wrapped box, the kind that usually contains jewelry, tied with an elaborate silver ribbon that probably cost more than its contents. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, sits a keychain. Not just any keychain, but one of those souvenir varieties sold at gas stations and truck stops. It features a small plastic cactus and the words Phoenix, Arizona, in faded green lettering. A souvenir of home, she says, her voice warm with meaning I'm supposed to understand. So you can always carry a piece of Arizona with you back to Colorado. The room falls silent, except for Connor's continued vroom-vrooming. Even he seems to sense the weight of the moment, looking up from his truck to study the adults' faces. Thank you. The words come out mechanically, professional politeness masking the hurt spreading through my chest like spilled coffee. Uncle Richard clears his throat. Well, that was lovely. Patricia, you've outdone yourself as always. The conversation shifts to praising Mom's hosting abilities, the delicious meal everyone enjoyed, the perfect organization that made the day run smoothly. I sit holding my gas station keychain, listening to my family celebrate an event that excluded me, while somehow including me just enough to maintain the illusion of togetherness. Ashley's phone buzzes, and she glances at it with practiced stealth. Oh my gosh, Lisa just posted pictures from her family dinner. Everyone looks so happy. She shows the screen to Aunt Beverly, who makes appropriate, admiring sounds. Soon, phones appear throughout the room, everyone sharing their own photos from today's celebration. Pictures of the dining room table laden with food, close-ups of the perfectly golden turkey, candid shots of family members laughing and talking. I'm not in any of them. The realization hits like a physical blow. They documented Christmas dinner, capturing every detail for social media posterity, but somehow forgot to include the daughter who drove 8 hours to be there. Or maybe they didn't. Forget. Maybe my absence from the photos, like my absence from the meal, was simply accepted as normal. Morgan catches my expression and quickly tucks her phone away, but not before I glimpse her Instagram story. Multiple photos and videos from today, showing the family at various stages of celebration. The turkey being carved. Everyone raises glasses in a toast. Candid moments of laughter and connection. All time-stamped between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., while I was still driving through the desert, believing I was headed home to be part of these exact moments. Mom begins collecting wrapping paper with efficient movements, transforming the chaos of gift opening back into her preferred order. Everyone helps, their coordination smooth from years of similar cleanups. I gather ribbon and bow fragments, my hands working automatically while my mind processes the implications of what I've witnessed. They have a system that works without me. Dinner at 11, gifts at 7:30, cleanup immediately afterward. Everyone knows their role, their timing, their place in the choreography of family celebration. I'm not missing from their system. I was never part of it to begin with. Tyler, who's been silent most of the evening, suddenly looks up from his phone with the expression teenagers get when they've stumbled onto adult drama. Hey, Jessica. How come you weren't in any of the Christmas dinner photos? The question lands in the middle of the room like a grenade. Conversations stop. People find sudden interest in the wrapping paper they're collecting, the presents they're organizing, anything but meeting my eyes. I was still driving when Christmas dinner happened, I say simply. Uncle Richard frowns. What do you mean, still? Driving? I thought you got here last night. I did, but Christmas dinner was at 11 this morning, while I was on the road from Flagstaff. The adult faces around the room cycle through various expressions, confusion from those who weren't privy to the planning, discomfort from those who were, and from Mom, something that looks dangerously close to annoyance at having her careful management exposed. There must be some misunderstanding, Uncle Richard says, looking between me and Mom. Patricia, surely you waited for Jessica. Mom's smile never wavers, but her voice takes on an edge sharp enough to cut glass. We ate when the food was ready, Richard. Jessica knew she was welcome to join us whenever she arrived. The gaslighting happens so smoothly it's almost artistic. In one sentence, she's transformed my exclusion into my choice, my absence into my preference. Everyone nods as if this makes perfect sense, as if arriving after Christmas dinner was my own poor planning rather than her calculated timing. But Tyler, bless his teenage directness, isn't satisfied. That's weird, though. Why would you eat Christmas dinner before everyone was here? Mom's composure cracks slightly. Tyler, sweetheart, you don't understand how complicated it is to coordinate a large family meal. I do understand, I say quietly, standing up from my chair. I understand perfectly. The silence that follows my statement stretches like a taut wire ready to snap. Mom's face cycles through micro-expressions, settling on wounded confusion, the same look she perfected when I was 12 and accused her of reading my diary. Jessica, honey, you're clearly exhausted from that long drive. Why don't we talk about this tomorrow when you've had some rest? The dismissal lands exactly as intended, transforming my legitimate concerns into symptoms of fatigue. Around the room, heads nod with understanding. Of course I'm being unreasonable. Of course the 8-hour drive has left me confused and emotional. But Tyler, still wielding teenage honesty like a sword, refuses to let it go. I still don't get it. If Christmas dinner was supposed to include Jessica, why didn't you wait for her? Uncle Richard shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Maybe we should let this go, Tyler. Family dynamics can be complicated. Not this complicated, Tyler mutters, earning sharp looks from several adults. I excuse myself from the room, walking past the kitchen where dishes from the meal I missed still sit in the drying rack. The sight of 13 plates, 13 sets of silverware, 13 cloth napkins folded neatly beside the sink confirms what I already know. They planned for me to miss Christmas dinner. They prepared for exactly the number of people who would actually be eating. My laptop waits on the desk in my childhood bedroom, and I power it up with newfound purpose. If I'm going to confront this situation properly, I need more than hurt, feelings, and scattered observations. I need documentation, patterns, proof that what happened today isn't an isolated incident of poor timing. The family group text thread loads first, and I begin taking screenshots methodically. Every message about Christmas planning, every coordination detail, every assumption made about who would participate and when. I save them to a folder labeled Evidence, feeling simultaneously justified and heartbroken that I need evidence to prove my own family's treatment of me. Next, I open my email and search for communications with Mom over the past 6 months. The pattern emerges slowly, but unmistakably. Invitations that arrived late, after other family members had already confirmed their attendance. Suggestions that I might prefer to visit during less busy times. Casual mentions of plans already finalized without my input. My birthday dinner, in July. The message came 3 days before the event, with apologies about the short notice and understanding if I couldn't make it. When I called to RSVP, Mom mentioned they'd already made reservations for the expected number of guests. Labor Day weekend, the family barbecue I only learned about through Ashley's Facebook photos, posted while the event was happening. When I called to ask why I wasn't invited, Mom claimed she assumed I'd be too busy with work to drive down for such a casual gathering. Thanksgiving, the invitation that came with built-in escape clauses. We know how hectic your schedule is, sweetheart. Don't feel obligated if it's too much trouble. When I confirmed my attendance, the response was lukewarm at best. If you're sure it's not too much of a burden. Each instance, viewed alone, could be explained by miscommunication or consideration for my busy schedule. Together, they form an unmistakable pattern of gradual exclusion disguised as accommodation. I create a timeline document, noting dates, events, and the specific language used in each communication. The progression is clear. 2 years ago, invitations were enthusiastic and assumed my participation. 18 months ago, they became tentative. A year ago, they started including exit ramps. Now, they don't really expect me to show up at all. My phone buzzes with a text from Rachel in Denver. Still waiting for those feast photos. How's family time treating you? I stare at the message, trying to find words for something that feels too absurd to be real. Instead, I open my camera roll and scroll through the photos from today. Pictures of the house decorated for Christmas. The beautiful table setting before anyone sat down. The wrapped gifts under the tree. Nothing from dinner itself because there was nothing to photograph, at least nothing I was present to document. The realization hits me with devastating clarity. I've been living in a parallel universe, believing I was an integral part of family gatherings while everyone else adjusted to my decreasing relevance. They've learned to celebrate without me so effectively that my actual presence has become an afterthought. I draft a response to Rachel 3 times before settling on, "Family dynamics are complicated. We'll call you tomorrow." A soft knock interrupts my documentation. Dad's voice comes through the door, gentler than Mom's, but carrying its own weight of expectation. "Jess? Can we talk for a minute?" I open the door to find him standing in the hallway, his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, his expression carefully neutral. He looks older in the dim hallway light, more fragile somehow than the robust man who hugged me yesterday. "Sure, Dad." He enters and sits heavily on my desk chair, leaving me to perch on the edge of the bed. The silence stretches between us, filled with the weight of words neither of us wants to say first. "Your mother's upset." He speaks to his hands instead of my face. "She feels like you're making a big deal out of something that was just poor timing." Poor timing. I repeat the phrase, testing its adequacy. "That's what we're calling it? What would you call it?" The question hangs in the air between us while I consider my options. I could minimize it, make it easier for everyone by accepting their version of events. I could apologize for being dramatic, for misunderstanding, for expecting too much. Instead, I show him my laptop screen, the timeline I've been building, the pattern of exclusion documented in our own family's communications. "Dad, look at this. Really look at it." He puts his reading glasses back on and leans forward, squinting at the screen. I watch his face as he processes the information, seeing recognition dawn slowly in his eyes. "These are all our conversations about family events over the past 2 years," I explain. "Notice anything?" He scrolls through the evidence silently, his expression growing more troubled with each entry. When he finally looks up, his face holds a sadness I haven't seen since his own father's funeral. "I didn't realize," he says quietly. "I thought your mother was just trying to be considerate of your schedule. Maybe she was, initially. But look at the progression, Dad. Look how the invitations changed, how the expectations shifted. By the time we get to today, no one actually expected me to be part of Christmas dinner." He removes his glasses and rubs his eyes, a gesture I remember from childhood when he was processing difficult information. "Your mother loves you, Jessica. You know that, right? I know she says she does." "But love isn't just words, Dad. Love shows up. Love makes space. Love doesn't eat Christmas dinner without you and then act like your hurt feelings are the problem." The truth of my own words surprises me. I've spent years accepting partial invitations and conditional belonging, telling myself that any inclusion was better than none. But sitting here with the evidence spread across my laptop screen, I realize how much I've diminished my own worth to accommodate their comfort. Dad stands up slowly, moving like a man carrying more weight than his frame was designed to bear. "I'm going to talk to your mother." "About what?" "About how we got here. About what we can do to fix it." After he leaves, I return to my documentation with renewed focus. If this conversation is going to happen, if we're going to address the elephant that's been growing in our living room for 2 years, I need to be prepared with facts, not just feelings. I find my old calendar app and cross-reference it with my communication records. The pattern becomes even clearer when I add the element of my own responses. Each time an invitation came with built-in escape clauses, I took them. When events were planned around my potential absence, I often ended up absent. My mother's low expectations became a self-fulfilling prophecy. But why? What changed 2 years ago that started this gradual exclusion? I scroll back further in my emails, looking for the turning point. There, in a thread from March 2 years ago, I find it. The conversation about Easter dinner, when I had to cancel at the last minute because of a work emergency. My apology email, sent from the airport while I waited for a flight to San Francisco to handle a client crisis. Mom's response was understanding, but cool. Of course, sweetheart. We understand that work comes first. We'll miss you, but we'll manage. We'll manage. 2 words that apparently became the foundation for all future planning. They learned to manage without me so well that eventually, they preferred it. I screenshot this exchange too, adding it to my growing file of evidence. Not because I want to prosecute my own family, but because I need to understand how we arrived at a place where my 8-hour drive to Christmas dinner was met with surprise rather than joy. My phone rings, Rachel's face appearing on the screen with perfect timing. I answer on the second ring, suddenly desperate to hear a voice from outside this house, outside this suffocating dynamic. Okay, what's going on? Rachel's voice carries the concern of someone who knows me well enough to read between the lines of my evasive texts. You sound weird, and you're being mysteriously vague about Christmas. Spill it. The story pours out of me in a rush, starting with yesterday's hopeful arrival and ending with this afternoon's devastating discovery. Rachel listens without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of disbelief or outrage. They ate Christmas dinner without you? While you were driving there? Jesus, Jess. That's not poor timing, that's deliberate exclusion. That's what I keep thinking. But everyone here acts like I'm being dramatic. Because they need you to be dramatic. If you're being unreasonable, they don't have to examine their own behavior. Rachel's psychology background serves me well in moments like this. She has a way of cutting through emotional fog to reach the practical core of relationship dynamics. What are you going to do? She asks. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to pack up and drive back to Denver tonight. Another part thinks I should stay and fight for my place in this family. What does your gut tell you? I consider the question while staring out the window at the Christmas lights decorating the neighbors' houses. Each display represents families gathering, traditions maintained, love expressed through shared presence and attention. My gut tells me that I deserve better than conditional belonging. That driving 8 hours to see family shouldn't result in arriving after the celebration has already concluded without me. Then trust your gut, Rachel says. And remember that setting boundaries isn't mean, even when people act like it is. Especially when they act like it is. After we hang up, I sit in the gathering darkness of my childhood room, surrounded by evidence of my family's gradual retreat from including me in their celebrations. The keychain Mom gave me sits on the nightstand, its plastic cactus catching light from the hallway. A souvenir of home, she called it. But looking at it now, it seems more like a consolation prize. A token to take back to my real life, the one that apparently exists separate from theirs. I open a new document on my laptop and begin typing. Not a timeline this time, but a letter. Words I need to say, boundaries I need to establish, truths I need to speak regardless of how they're received. If tomorrow brings the conversation Dad promised, I want to be ready with more than hurt feelings. I want to be ready with clarity, with evidence, and with a clear vision of what needs to change if we're going to move forward as an actual family, instead of people who share DNA and occasional holiday meals. The house settles into nighttime quiet around me as I work, but I can feel the tension humming beneath the silence. Tomorrow will bring reckoning, one way or another. Tonight, I will prepare. The morning light filtering through my bedroom blinds carries the promise of reckoning. I've been awake since 5 a.m., not from anxiety, but from a crystalline clarity that sleep couldn't touch. My laptop sits open beside me, displaying the letter I finished at 2 a.m, every word chosen with surgical precision. The house stirs to life around me with familiar sounds. Dad's coffee maker gurgling in the kitchen. Mom's slippers shuffling across hardwood floors. The morning routine of a family that learned to function smoothly in my absence. I shower and dress deliberately, choosing clothes that make me feel confident rather than trying to blend into their expectations. A crisp white button-down shirt, instead of the casual sweater I might have worn yesterday. Dark jeans that fit well instead of the comfortable but shapeless clothes I usually travel in. Small choices that signal to myself as much as to them that today will be different. The kitchen smells of bacon and fresh coffee when I emerge. Mom stands at the stove, her back to me, turning strips of meat with practiced efficiency. Dad sits at the breakfast bar with his newspaper and coffee, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mom says without turning around. "I made your favorite breakfast. Bacon, scrambled eggs, and those hash browns you always liked as a child." The gesture would be touching if it weren't so calculated. She's offering comfort food as a preemptive strike against difficult conversations. The same strategy she used when I was 13 and furious about her reading my journal. "Thanks, Mom. We need to talk." The words hang in the morning air like smoke, signals. Dad looks up from his newspaper, his expression cautious. Mom's shoulders tense, but she continues cooking as if nothing has changed. "Of course, honey, after breakfast. You know how I feel about difficult conversations on an empty stomach." The deflection is smooth, practiced, designed to give her time to prepare her defenses while mine potentially weaken over food and family comfort. But I've spent the night preparing for exactly these kinds of maneuvers. Actually, I'd prefer to talk now, before the day gets complicated with other people and obligations. Mom finally turns from the stove, her smile bright but brittle. "Jessica, you're clearly still upset. About yesterday's misunderstanding. I was hoping a good night's sleep would help you see things more clearly." Misunderstanding. The word lands like a slap, reducing my exclusion from Christmas dinner to a simple communication error. I sit down at the kitchen table and open my laptop, the screen displaying the evidence I've compiled. Dad sets down his newspaper, recognizing the gravity of the moment. Mom remains standing, spatula in hand, as if maintaining her position at the stove will somehow keep her in control of the situation. "I want to show you both something." I turn the laptop screen so they can see the timeline I've created. These are screenshots from our family group texts, emails, and messages over the past 2 years. Notice the pattern. Dad moves his chair closer to get a better view. Mom approaches, reluctantly, her defensive posture already forming. "This is from my birthday dinner in July." I point to the relevant exchange. The invitation came 3 days before the event, with apologies for short notice. "When I called to confirm, you mentioned you'd already made reservations for the expected number of guests." Mom's face remains carefully neutral. "I was trying to be considerate of your busy schedule. And this is Labor Day weekend." I scroll to the next entry. "I found out about the family barbecue through Ashley's Facebook photos while it was happening. When I asked why I wasn't invited, you said you assumed I'd be too busy. That was just a casual get-together," Mom protests. "Nothing formal." Dad studies the screen intently, his expression growing more troubled as the pattern becomes clear. "Patricia, look at the language in these messages. Look how they change over time." I scroll through the progression methodically, showing how invitations transformed from enthusiastic assumptions of my participation to tentative offerings with built-in escape clauses. The evidence is irrefutable, documented in their own words. And finally, yesterday. I display the Christmas planning thread. Look at the coordination for Christmas dinner. Assignments for dishes, confirmation of arrival times, discussions of seating, arrangements. Everything planned with precision, except for making sure I'd actually be here to participate. The kitchen falls silent except for the bacon starting to burn on the stove. Mom moves to turn off the heat, using the distraction to compose her response. "You're taking isolated incidents and creating a narrative that isn't fair," she says, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Every family has scheduling challenges. These aren't isolated incidents, Mom. This is a systematic pattern of planning around my absence. You've learned to celebrate without me so effectively that my actual presence has become an afterthought." Dad removes his reading glasses and sets them on the table with deliberate care. "Jessica's right, Patricia. I didn't see it before, but looking at this evidence, the pattern is undeniable." Mom's carefully maintained composure begins to crack. "You're both ganging up on me over something that was simply poor timing." Poor timing doesn't explain why Christmas dinner happened at exactly the time that guaranteed I'd miss it. I pull up another screenshot. Look at this text thread from last week. Morgan confirming the 11 a.m. start time, Ashley asking about arrival logistics, Uncle Richard joking about coming hungry. Everyone knew dinner was at 11 a.m. except the person driving 8 hours to be here. That's not true. Mom's voice rises, her mask of wounded innocence slipping to reveal the anger underneath. "You knew the general timing. I can't be responsible for managing every detail of your travel schedule." The gaslighting is masterful, transforming her deliberate planning into my poor communication. But I'm prepared for this too. I open another document, this one showing my travel confirmations shared with the family weeks in advance. My arrival time of 9 p.m. on December 24th, clearly communicated and acknowledged by multiple family members. Everyone knew I was arriving Christmas Eve at 9 p.m. Christmas dinner at 11 a.m. the next morning guaranteed I'd miss it, no matter how well I managed my schedule. Dad's face has gone pale as the full scope of the situation becomes clear. "Patricia, why would you plan dinner before Jessica arrived?" The question hangs in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Mom looks between us, her expression cycling through various defenses before settling on righteous indignation. "Because she's unreliable." The words explode from her with surprising force. She cancels at the last minute for work emergencies. She leaves early because of flights. She treats family gatherings like optional events that she can attend or skip based on her convenience. The accusation stings because it contains a grain of truth. I have canceled plans for work. I have left early to catch flights. But the context makes all the difference. 2 years ago, I had to cancel Easter for a client emergency. Once. Mom. 1 time in 12 years of never missing a family gathering. Once was enough. She's fully committed to her narrative now, the careful mask completely abandoned. Do you know what it's like to plan events around someone who might or might not show up? To make reservations and prepare food and arrange seating for someone who treats your efforts as optional? The projection is stunning. She's transformed her systematic exclusion of me into her victimization by my unreliability. So you solved the problem by planning events I couldn't attend even if I wanted to? I solved the problem by managing realistic expectations. Her voice carries the satisfaction of someone who believes she's found the perfect justification for her actions. If you show up, wonderful. If you don't, we're not left scrambling to adjust. Dad stands up slowly, his chair scraping against the kitchen tile. Patricia, listen to yourself. You're describing our daughter like she's a weather event you need to plan around instead of a family member you want to include? She rounds on him with fury. I haven't seen since my teenage years. Don't you dare make me the villain here, David. I've held this family together for 35 years while accommodating everyone's schedules and preferences and dietary restrictions. If Jessica can't be bothered to prioritize family time, that's her choice. The argument we've been circling finally breaks into the open, years of resentment and disappointment spilling across the kitchen like wine on white fabric. But I'm not the child in this scenario anymore, and I refuse to let their conflict swallow my truth. Stop, I say firmly, my voice cutting through their escalating argument. Both of you stop. They turn to me, surprised by the authority in my voice. This isn't about Dad's loyalty or your martyrdom, Mom. This is about the fact that you systematically excluded me from family celebrations and then convinced everyone, including yourselves, that it was my choice. I stand up from the table, feeling my full height for the first time in this house in years. I drove 8 hours to be part of Christmas dinner. I left Denver at 4 a.m. on Christmas Eve to make sure I'd arrive in time to help with preparations. I spent weeks choosing gifts that showed how much I know and care about each person in this family. My voice remains steady, but I can feel the emotion building behind each word. And when I got here, I discovered that Christmas dinner had already happened without me. Not because of poor timing or miscommunication, but because you planned it that way. Because it's easier to exclude me and blame me for being excluded than to actually make space for me in your lives. Mom's face cycles through, emotions before settling on cold fury. Fine, Jessica. You want to be the victim so badly? You want to make this all about how terrible I am? Go ahead. But don't expect me to apologize for managing my family in a way that actually works. The word managing hits like ice water. That's exactly what this is about, isn't it? Managing me, controlling the narrative, making sure family events happen, on your terms, with your comfort as the priority. She crosses her arms, her stance defensive but determined. If that's how you choose to see it, that's how it is, Mom. The evidence is right here. 2 years of gradually reducing my place in this family until my presence became optional and my absence became expected. Dad looks between us with the expression of a man watching something precious shatter beyond repair. What do you want from us, Jessica? He asks quietly. How do we fix this? The question I've been preparing for all night. I take a breath and choose my words carefully. I want to acknowledge that what happened yesterday wasn't poor timing or misunderstanding. I want recognition that excluding me from Christmas dinner was a choice, not an accident. And I want assurance that if I'm going to remain part of this family, I'll actually be included in family events in Part 7, The New Beginning. The silence stretches for what feels like an eternity, but probably lasts only 30 seconds. Mom stares at me with an expression that cycles between defiance and something that might be recognition. Dad sits heavily in his chair, the weight of revelation settling on his shoulders like snow. Finally, Mom speaks, her voice barely above, a whisper. You really believe I deliberately excluded you from Christmas dinner? It's not a question, but I answer anyway. The evidence speaks for itself, Mom. 11 a.m. start time when you knew I was arriving at 9 p.m. Coordination with everyone, except me. Place settings for exactly the number of people who would actually be eating. She walks to the kitchen window and stares out at the desert landscape, her reflection ghost-like in the morning light. When she turns back, her face holds a vulnerability I haven't seen since childhood. I was protecting myself, she says quietly. From disappointment. From having to explain to your aunts and uncles why you didn't show up again. From reorganizing everything at the last minute when work inevitably called you away. The honesty catches me off guard. I expected more deflection, more blame, more attempts to rewrite history. Instead, she's admitting to exactly what I accused her of. So instead of risking disappointment, you guaranteed it, I say. You made sure the thing you were afraid of would definitely happen. Dad clears his throat, his voice rough with emotion. Patricia, I had no idea you felt this way. Why didn't you talk to me about your concerns? Because you would have told me to give her another chance, she replies, turning to face him. You would have said I was being unfair, that work emergencies happen, that family should be understanding, and maybe you would have been right. She pauses, her hands twisting the dish towel she's been holding. But I was tired of being understanding. tired of making accommodations for someone who seemed to take them for granted, tired of feeling like we were always competing with your career for your attention. The words hit deeper than I expected because they reveal the hurt underneath her controlling behavior. But understanding someone's pain doesn't excuse the damage they cause with it. Mom, I get that you were hurt when I canceled Easter 2 years ago. I really do. But the solution wasn't to systematically exclude me from every family gathering since then. I wasn't excluding you, she protests, but the argument sounds hollow now. I was just preparing for reality. Preparing for reality by making sure your worst fears came true, I counter. Creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where I really wasn't part of family celebrations because you planned them specifically to happen without me. Dad stands up and moves to the coffee maker, refilling his mug with hands that shake slightly. The silence stretches again, filled with the weight of years of misunderstandings and unspoken resentments. I've been thinking about this all night, I continue. My voice is getting softer now. And I understand how we got here. But I can't accept staying here. If I'm going to remain part of this family, things have to change fundamentally. Mom returns to the table, sitting across from me with the defeated posture of someone who realizes their defenses have crumbled. What do you need from us? She asks. And for the first time in years, the question sounds genuine rather than performative. I pull out the letter I wrote last night, my hands steady as I unfold the pages. I spent hours thinking about this, trying to figure out what would need to be different for us to move forward. Dad sits back down, his attention focused entirely on me. Mom fidgets with her wedding ring but maintains eye contact. First, I need acknowledgement that what happened yesterday was deliberate exclusion, not poor timing or miscommunication. I need you to own that choice and its impact. Mom's jaw tightens, but she nods slowly. I can do that. Second, if I'm invited to family events, I need to actually be invited, not tentatively included with escape clauses and disclaimers about understanding if I can't make it. Either you want me there or you don't. This seems easier for her to accept. Okay. Third, I need to be included in the planning process for events I'm expected to attend. Not just informed of decisions already made, but actually consulted about timing, logistics, and arrangements. Dad nods approvingly. That seems reasonable. And finally, I need space to rebuild trust gradually. I'm not going to pretend everything is fine now that we've had this conversation. It's going to take time for me to believe that these changes are real and lasting. The last requirement seems to surprise them both. Mom's eyebrows draw together in concern. What does that look like practically? She asks. It means I probably won't be coming home for every holiday or family gathering for a while. It means I'll need to see consistent changes in how you communicate with me before I'm comfortable making the drive again. It means starting small and building up to bigger commitments. The idea of voluntary distance clearly distresses her, which is progress in itself. For the first time in years, my absence would be a loss rather than a relief. I don't want to lose you, she says, her voice thick with emotion. Despite everything that's happened, despite the mistakes I've made, I don't want to lose my daughter. Then, show me you want to keep me, I reply. Through actions, not just words. We spend the next 2 hours talking through specific changes. How invitations will be extended. How planning discussions will include me from the beginning rather than after major decisions have been made. How they'll communicate their actual desires rather than managing their expectations. Dad proves surprisingly helpful as a mediator, asking clarifying questions and helping translate between Mom's defensive language and my direct requests. It's the most honest conversation we've had as a family in years, possibly ever. By noon, we've established a framework for moving forward. It's tentative and will require ongoing work, but it's more than I expected when I walked into the kitchen this morning armed with evidence and ultimatums. Mom makes sandwiches for lunch, her movements careful and deliberate as if she's afraid of making another mistake. We eat in companionable silence, the weight of the morning's revelations settling into something that might eventually become acceptance. That afternoon, I help pack up Christmas decorations, a task that usually happens the day after New Year's but feels appropriate now. We're dismantling the version of family celebration that excluded me, making space for something different to grow. Morgan calls around 3, her voice bright with curiosity. "How are things going over there? Dad texted that you all were having important conversations." "Better than expected," I tell her honestly. "We've got a lot to work through, but at least we're talking about reality instead of pretending everything is fine." She's quiet for a moment. "I owe you an apology, Jessica. I knew something was off about yesterday, but I didn't speak up. I should have questioned the timing, should have pushed back when Mom started making excuses." "I appreciate that, Morgan. But you're not responsible for managing Mom's behavior or protecting me from it. We all have to figure out how to be honest with each other going forward." When we hang up, I realize this conversation represents another kind of progress. Morgan acknowledged her role in the family dynamics, taking responsibility for her own choices rather than just going along with whatever kept the peace. That evening, as I pack my suitcase for tomorrow's drive back to Denver, Mom knocks on my bedroom door. She enters carrying a wrapped gift, much larger than yesterday's gas station keychain. "I wanted to give you something else," she says, setting the package on my desk. "Something that actually reflects how I see you." Inside the wrapping paper is a framed photograph from my college art show, one she must have saved from my senior year exhibition. It shows me standing next to one of my paintings, wearing a black dress and a huge smile, surrounded by red dots indicating sold pieces. "I remember that night," I say, running my fingers along the frame's edge. "You and Dad drove up from Phoenix. You said you were proud of me. I was proud of you. I am proud of you." She sits on the edge of my bed, her voice soft with memory. "I think somewhere along the way, I started resenting your success instead of celebrating it. Started seeing your independent life as a rejection of family instead of an achievement to be proud of. The insight surprises me with its accuracy. The successful career that took me away from Phoenix, the apartment I love, the life I built without their daily input, all of it became evidence of my disloyalty rather than proof of their good parenting. I don't want to choose between having a career and having a family," I tell her. "I never wanted it to be an either-or situation." "It doesn't have to be," she agrees. "I made it that way because I was afraid of being left behind. But pushing you away guaranteed the thing I was trying to prevent." We talk until nearly midnight, filling in gaps and clarifying misunderstandings that have accumulated over years of careful avoidance. It's not a complete resolution. That will take much more time and consistent follow-through, but it's a foundation we can build on. The drive back to Denver the next morning feels different from the anxious journey down. I'm not carrying the weight of unmet expectations or the confusion of mixed messages. The 8 hours pass quickly, filled with phone calls to Rachel, music that matches my mood, and stops at scenic overlooks I was too stressed to notice on Christmas. My apartment welcomes me with familiar comfort, but it no longer feels like a refuge from family obligations. Instead, it feels like home base, the place where I live my life, which happens to include family relationships that are now more honest than they've been in years. Over the following months, the changes are gradual but noticeable. Mom's texts are more direct about what she wants and when. Dad calls to include me in planning conversations before decisions are made. Morgan starts checking in about family dynamics instead of just accepting whatever keeps everyone comfortable. My birthday dinner in July happens on my actual birthday, with an invitation that arrives 6 weeks in advance and genuine enthusiasm. When I RSVP yes. The menu includes foods I actually like rather than just family favorites. The conversation includes updates on my life rather than just polite inquiries. Labor Day weekend brings the first family barbecue I've attended in 3 years. It's small and casual, exactly as advertised, with no hidden agendas or unspoken expectations. I bring a salad and stay for the entire afternoon, leaving only when the evening naturally winds down rather than rushing to catch a flight. By October, I felt confident enough to suggest hosting Thanksgiving in Denver, offering to have the family come to me for once. Mom's enthusiasm is genuine, and the planning process includes me from the beginning. Everyone arrives on time, brings what they promised, and seems genuinely happy to be in my space sharing a meal I prepared. It's not perfect. Family relationships never are. But it's real in a way ours hasn't been for years. We disagree sometimes, but we disagree honestly. We make mistakes, but we acknowledge them instead of pretending they didn't happen. The Christmas keychain sits on my Denver bookshelf now, not as a consolation prize, but as a reminder. A reminder of how far we've come, how much we've learned, about actually including each other in our lives, instead of just going through the motions of family connection. This December, I'm driving to Phoenix again for Christmas dinner, but this time, the invitation came in September with genuine excitement about my visit. This time, the planning includes my preferences and schedule. This time, Christmas dinner is planned for December 25th at 2 p.m., well after my 9 a.m. arrival, and well within the time frame we agreed on together. This time, I'm not just hoping to be part of Christmas dinner. I'm expected, planned for, and genuinely wanted. The difference, it turns out, is everything. Instead of planned around. The silence that follows feels pregnant with possibility and peril. Mom stares at me with an expression I can't read, her anger shifting into something more complex. Dad nods slowly, as if weighing the reasonableness of my requests. "And if we can't give you those things?" Mom asks, her voice quiet but sharp. "Then I'll know where I stand. And I'll make decisions about my future involvement accordingly." The ultimatum hangs between us like a bridge neither of us is sure we want to cross. But after 2 years of accepting crumbs and calling them meals, I'm finally ready to ask for a place at the actual table or acknowledge that one doesn't exist for me. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And, hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.